Good morning, everybody. That's a threat. No. You're lucky it's not an accordion or bagpipes. I'll play softly. So I chose that song for a whole bunch of reasons, partially because it's a riddle. And so many of us listen to that song and we think of it as the answer. But really, it's a conundrum. It's a riddle. And it's a riddle that is age old. And it's a riddle that's repeated often. In fact, that particular sound and song and cycle and mantra and question that Dylan asks, he didn't just make that up. Because when he says, how many years will the mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Where did he get that from? If you listen to the chords, ooh. That is a mantra. It is the oldest love song in the world. But all love songs have a happy side and a sad side. So sometimes it's unrequited love. Oh, my love, my darling, I tremble for your touch. And sometimes it's a spiritual love song. Home, 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 home. Om Namah, Om Shivaya, Om Namah, Om Shivaya. Probably should have tuned that up. C, F, G, C, A minor, F, G, G7, C. It's a cycle. It goes around and around. When the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, when the mountain should crumble to the sea. Do you hear the riddle there? The Buddha said, forever is when the wind comes down from the sky and kisses the mountain like a silk shawl once every 100 years until that mountain turns into the beach and goes into the sea. That's the answer to our riddle today. The answer is forever. How many years will we be at war? Forever. How many years will we not learn the lessons of history? Forever. Why? Because we get to rewrite the answers to mysteries to suit our own purposes. We do it all the time. Did you know that the founder of the Unity Church, who first put out his list of 12 powers, wrote as one of the powers back in the 1800s, zeal is the power word of this month. But we, like many churches everywhere, and many more than even just Unity churches, use this list. We'll use this list religiously, except for one word. We say enthusiasm because we're afraid of zeal. Why are we afraid of zeal? Where did zeal get a bad name? In fact, where did a lot of words get a bad name? How many true crime fans do I have here? Okay. If you have a chance and you get to watch Only Murders in the Building with Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez, it is a true crime mystery. And so, for those of you who don't know what true crime is, imagine Nancy Hardy stories told on the radio by people who were retelling these stories, right? So, my son, who's 10, turned me on to these iPads. I say things like the Facebook. And they are storytellings. And they're storytellings that are retold by other people. Not the cops, not the newspaper journalists, but people like you and me. And they are telling the stories in ways that is different, not seen. So I'm going to tell you a true crime story today. And that true crime story is called Who Killed Jesus? Like many stories, we think we know the answer. And we think we know who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. But I want to tell you the story through the eyes of two Simons. Did you know there are two Simons in the Bible? Many of us have sort of conflated them together. It's the one generic Simon. But you'll notice that in the Greek written versions, they make a distinction between Simon Peter, Simon who is called Peter, and Simon Zelotes. And Simon Zelotes means Simon the Zealot. He who is full of zeal, sometimes we think of it that way. And Simon Petrus, Simon who is the rock. And the forces of the Christian church at that time were seen in these two men. One was impetuous and impulsive as the wind, and the other was to be called the rock. If you imagine that the Bible we read, or don't, but where these stories come from, we think of Jesus as the peacemaker, as the lamb. But as I talked about in another sermon, Jesus went into the temple, or in front of the temple, where the market was, and he thrashed the moneylenders. Not a peaceful act. He cursed the fig, and that was a symbolic, metaphoric act. But that gives us a clue to not only who he is, but why he died. He says to Simon at one point, Simon Peter, the rock, do you not think that I will not take this bitter pill, that I will not do what I am supposed to do? He meant that I will not fulfill the prophecies. Why did he say that? Because Simon Peter, the rock, not the impetuous one, drew his sword and the high priest who Jesus was talking to, who had offended Jesus, his servant came forward and Simon cut his ear off. Now, one of the books of the Bible says not only did Jesus heal that servant, who we are to understand was trying to protect the high priest, but he actually gives us his name, Malchus. Now, we don't really know if that was his name. Malchus in Hebrew means he is our king. And it is the name of the Malchusites. The Malchusites believed that the high priest was the Messiah. And the Jesusites, the followers of Jesus, they believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Have you ever wondered why the Romans put a mocking sign on the cross that says, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews? In order to understand, we have to know what the word Messiah means. A Messiah is not a savior. It is not a rescuer. It is not a title that comes down from God. It is a political title, and it is a spiritual title. And it is a prophesied idea that when the house of the priests come together with the house of the kings, when the lords come together with the Christs, they become the Lord and Christ. We unite the spiritual with the political. We unite the wind with the rock. Where does that come from? When the sky that we look upon shall tumble and fall, when the mountain should perish to the sea, where does that come from? I can tell you that Benny King and Lieber and Stoller and Bob Dylan, all the poets of our age, where they heard that from is from a Negro spiritual called Stand By Me. Dylan heard those lyrics because in the song Stand By Me, you hear what Stoller and Lieber wrote about the sky and the mountain and the Buddhist koan of forever. Dylan knew this song because Dylan was a huge fan of a guy named Alan Lomax. And Alan Lomax collected the Negro spirituals and all of the old gospel and all of the old tunes from the 16, 17, and 1800s. And Dylan wanted access to that song and to those musics and to those poems because that's what fueled his idea of how to bring spiritual music together, folk music, with the political climate that was happening in the 1960s. Lieber and Stoller, who were also very, very politically active, also were reading the same songs, the same lyrics. And there was, in 1905, a place where all of these things came together, and that was in the archives of Alan Lomax. It's said, by the way, that Bob Dylan dated Lomax's daughter just to get to Alan Lomax and have access to these songs and to this music. But both Benny King and Lieber and Stoller write the mountains and the sky, the wind and the rock. And Dylan writes in his riddle, how many years will the mountain exist? the answer is blowing in the wind. They're making a reference. They're making a reference to Stand By Me, the Negro spiritual, and they're making a reference to the psalmist. Because David wrote, when the sky shall tumble and fall and the mountains will crumble to the sea. He wrote that in the Psalms. And why did he write that? Because he was writing a letter to his friend Jonathan. And he was in hiding because Jonathan's father was trying to kill David. Why? Because David belonged to the bloodlines of Judea that would unite the Christ and the high priest with the king and the Lord. He was both a Lord and a Christ. He was a Messiah. And Saul knew that he would have no legitimacy if somebody came out of Judea and united these two clans. Jonathan recognized him. Jonathan would have been the king of what would have been unified as Israel. But he laid down his crown for his best friend and said, no, you are the Messiah. You have the bloodline. You are the one who has the power. And you are the one who can lead the people because you slayed the giant, which is also a metaphor and a mystery. And so now, however many years later, I don't know, hundreds of years at least, Jesus comes out of the desert, and he is a Nazarene. That doesn't mean he was born in Nazareth. Did you know that Nazareth did not exist till 50 years after Jesus died? Nazarenes were a sect of people who were united against the Roman Empire. He says to Judas to go and find, there's an old joke that Jesus says, hey, we're short 30 shekels. I don't care what you have to do, but can you go out and get us the money to pay for this dinner? And there's a weird truth to that. Jesus knows what he is about to do. And how does he know that? Well, he's been preaching to his choir. Who's his choir? Judas Iscariot in Latin is Sicarii. Judas, the Sicarii. Who are the Sicarii? The Sicarii are the dagger carriers. They are a militant group of anti-Romans. And Judas belonged to that militant group. But he's not the only one. There are many people in the Bible who are referred to as Iscariot, or in Latin, Sicarii. Jesus is referred to as a Nazarene, a peaceful but still resistant group. And Simon Zelotes is identified as a zealot, a political group that believes that they need to protect the kingship of Judea and the unified Israeli countries away from Rome. And the high priest that they were talking to was a puppet government set up by Rome. Illegitimate, like King Saul, however many years before. So Jesus was surrounded by these men. And not only these men, but when Jesus went before and they had to select between Jesus to give amnesty to or a thief, the people chose the thief. But the thief was not a common thief. The thief was, in the Bible, listai. And listai is the name of a political group that was militant, and It meant the thieves in the night, because they were guerrilla fighters. Jesus was killed between two listai. These were not just common thieves. They were militants, and they were zealots. The question is not who killed Jesus. The question is why. What he was preaching was heresy. We don't get that version because the victors write history. And when the Roman Church adopted and adapted Christianity, they erased the meanings of the words to the point where only priests were allowed to read those words, and only in the languages that nobody spoke. Jesus was killed because he was different than what the government told him. So when you hear Stand By Me, you know that it's a love song, but it's also a song that is about the people standing together. When you hear The Answer Is Blowing in the Wind, it's not just a question. It's a song that is about bringing people together. So, as we go into this month and we talk about zeal, I want you to know that it's not just enthusiasm, but it's the willingness to sacrifice, the belief that you have, you will die for, you will sacrifice yourself for. It is the level of enthusiasm that means that you believe that there are things that are important enough to fight for forever. Even though you know the outcome may end your own life or may never be solved and go on forever and ever and ever. And today in these times, when we look at the things that are worth fighting for, even though we don't know if there will ever be an end to the violence, if there will ever be an end to racism, if there will ever be an end to our being able to be safe from pandemics, from plagues, that those things are still worth fighting for. And so, with all the zeal in the world, I say namaste to you. I say peace, but not peace at the cost of silence. Be zealous. I love all of you. Take care.